Let's get into today's episode of Why We Succeed.
So when you look at yourself now on the other side of the debt, you've developed a new mindset towards finances in a position where now you're helping other people to get out of, the tough situations that they're in financially. With that in mind, how do you personally define success?
Yeah, it's always an interesting conversation. And I think for me, how I define success is just knowing that I have tried something and I've put my all into it and I've maybe made mistakes, but I have been willing to actually learn from it and come out of it the other side. So I don't necessarily think of success of having, a certain amount of money or being in a certain position, because success is going to mean, something different to everyone.
Right.
But just knowing that I have really made a difference to my own life, and I know that I'm now starting to make a difference to other lives. For me, that is kind of how I define success for myself. Right. And it's where I've now seen actually I have made a difference in my own personal life, and now's my chance to make it in other people as well.
Yes. And I'm curious, what is the story behind you saying, hey, you know what? I want to help other people. The same way that I was able to get myself out of this situation, I now want to pay it forward in a sense to help others.
Yeah, I think part of it is from a faith perspective. So for me, I've always kind of wanted to serve. So I serve in my church, for example, and it's kind of something that I feel that is important. But at the same time, it was almost like a generational wealth kind of thing, where I kind of thought, actually, if no one had gone onto the internet to talk about personal finances and actually building wealth, I would not have learned anything, and I would be in the same position as I am today. And even when I was working in my 9-to-5 job, I was working in diversity and inclusion. And what I saw was that, you had certain people that kept going up the ranks and they kept being promoted, and certain other people that weren't being promoted for whatever reason. And a lot of the times it's because they didn't have anyone sponsoring them, or they just didn't know what they should be doing to, improve themselves and actually start to go up the ranks. And so with that, all of these things, I think I just kind of felt I also need to tell people, particularly people that maybe look like me. So whether it's, people of ethnic minorities, whether it's women, for example, if they can see a role model and see that someone like them that is very relatable, I don't earn big bucks. I'm not like a very rich person right now. Not yet, exactly. So, seeing that I have still been able to come out the other side when it comes to my personal finances, I'm really just trying to hope that that means that people can also do the same thing, and they can then also educate others as well. So you have a lot of people, for example, from the Black community that are now also building wealth and building wealth for their children and generations to come.
I love that. And can you elaborate a little bit on how important it is for you to serve? And as you mentioned, it's stemming from your faith. Why is that such an integral part for you personally?
Yeah, because I think for me, I'm just always thankful personally to God for what God has done for me in my life. And just the fact that I feel as if it was God that basically made me understand that my personal finances were a bit of a mess and that I needed to work on it. And for me, it was really interesting, because the time that I just started stumbling on, personal finances on YouTube channels and started reading books, my church had also started talking about this at the same time.
Wow.
And because of that, I said, oh God, you're telling me something. You get what I mean? If I don't do anything, I'm going to be in trouble. And so because of that, I almost felt, if it wasn't for God, I would not be in the position that I am today. And I almost have to, give back to thank God and say, actually, the reason why I'm in this position is because of him. And so I now want to be able to share that as well with others, so that they can also be in the position where they can also serve as well at the end.
Yeah. And when you look at the people that you've had the opportunity to help through your channel, and I'm sure even personally, I'm sure you've also helped people in your church and your community, what have been some of the feedback that you received? What are the things about your story that has resonated the most with the people that you've interacted with and helped?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the relatable aspect. And
Mm,
particularly, I see when it comes to women and ethnic minorities, the fact that
mhm.
they see someone looking like them
Yes.
actually, taking control of their finances and actually now starting to accelerate and start, building their wealth. And I
Yes.
think for me, it's almost kind of being seen as a role model, knowing that, if she can do it, I can too. If she
Right.
comes from the same background as me or a very similar background, I can do it as well.
Yes.
And, in terms of generations, I mean, you hear that like the millennial generation or Gen Z generation, you hear that, they're not able to afford houses, for example,
Hmm.
because things are getting so expensive. And so
Hmm.
if, someone is seeing that actually someone's able to save a lot of money, not actually earning like a huge amount of money, because I always tell people, I don't earn big bucks at all, but
Not
seeing that
yet.
I'm still able to save, yeah, and yet,
I'm gonna
exactly,
keep saying
yet, yet,
it.
yet,
It's
yeah,
coming. It is. You
exactly,
have that.
it
You
is.
have the right heart, and it's
No,
just a matter of time.
definitely. No, no, definitely. But yeah, I think the fact that people are seeing that I'm also
Mhm.
able to make a difference in my life, I think that's probably the greatest thing. It's just really having that relatability, I think has
Mhm.
been amazing.
Right. And I want to go back to something that you mentioned, right? Because you have mentioned that you're not yet making the big bucks, but you are saving a substantial amount of money. And
Mhm.
we know, and I'm gonna make this assumption, but definitely let me know if I'm wrong. A lot of people tend to say, "Hey, I'm not making enough to be able to save. I'm not making enough to be able to invest." So, what would you say to people who still have that mindset?
Yeah, I definitely thought I would say I had a similar mindset when I first started because
Okay.
I thought that, I'm not able to save money. I'm not able to overpay on my debt. But
Right.
until I really looked at my budget, and a lot of people, they don't budget as well. So
Mhm.
you may say that you can't save money, but do you actually understand what is coming in
Right.
versus what is coming out? And a lot of people don't actually realize this. And
Right.
so for me, again, it was another mindset thing where I had to really question myself and say,
Mm.
is everything that I'm spending on, is that actually something I should be spending money on? Are
Mhm.
there ways that actually I probably could save money? Because actually,
Right.
when I look at a lot of people's budgets and they're
Hmm.
spending hundreds on takeaways, for example. But
Yep.
then you still say that you can't save money, but you've
Right.
spent $250 or pounds on
Right.
takeaways for the
Yep.
month. And so I'm always questioning, I always have to ask, my audience, what
Mhm.
are you actually valuing? Because if you
Right.
really do value the takeaways,
Mhm.
fine, but just know that that's going to have an impact on your future self because you're not able to
Mhm.
save and invest your money for your future.
Most definitely. And I'm curious, having been on the side of getting out of debt and now in a position of building wealth, what would you say are some of the differences between the two for you?
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think there's a key difference. I think for me, the first step is almost to really start working on your mindset, particularly when
Mhm.
you are looking to build wealth. Because when
Okay.
you're trying to pay off your debt, you're obviously, for me, I was really trying to attack everything. And I had to have an element of sacrifice
Mhm.
because I was trying to pay it off relatively quickly. But
Right.
now I'm at a position where I'm trying to build wealth. Now I'm really thinking, how can I be creative and how can I
Mhm.
serve
Right.
to then be able to actually build that wealth. And I think there are some key differences there. I think, again,
Mhm.
the mindset shift is quite important, but understanding, when you're trying to build wealth, you shouldn't really be thinking about how you can just make a quick buck or how
Right.
you can just make money really quickly. For
Mhm.
me, when it came to actually building wealth, I really needed to understand my why. What
Mm.
am I building wealth for? Why is it important to me? And then what vehicles can I use to actually be able to build wealth for the long term and for generations to come as well?
Right. That's wonderful. And I'm curious, what vehicles have you been utilizing personally, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, I invest in the stock market. So that's something that I currently invest in quite
Mhm.
consistently. And then obviously I well, it was my side hustle before, but now it's my business actually.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I want to accelerate for me to essentially reach financial independence and be able to build wealth. And we're
Mm-hmm.
also going to be looking at investing in real estate as well. So that's also a
Nice.
vehicle that we're currently saving up for, so that hopefully we can start investing in that and essentially, buy a property and
Mm-hmm.
rent that out.
Right. That's great. And going back to you and your business in particular, was there anybody who kind of spoke into you and was like, yo, Veronia, you need to start your business, you need to make that happen? Or was it something that was more directed towards you just internally saying, hey, this is something that I want to do?
Yeah, I think it was probably more God that I would say, because I originally, when I started my YouTube channel, I just kind of wanted to share my story, and I thought,
Mhm.
this is something that I could potentially do on the side. I
Mm.
never really saw it as an actual business. I thought it was just
Okay.
something where, I could do a YouTube channel, maybe I could make
Right.
a few bucks and then that's it, and that's great.
Yeah.
And as I continued to go through it, I had people asking me questions and asking me advice
Mhm.
on certain things. And then the more I researched, it felt like God was kind of telling me, actually, this is probably a route that you may want to go through. And the more I then kind of started, educating myself around creating a business, how to actually serve others, knowing that I could do things such as coaching as well. So that's something that I currently do now. And then once I started seeing that people were getting results, I
Mhm.
then felt, actually, I can really start to make a business out of this. So
Right.
yeah, I would definitely say it's probably God that's really been in my mind. But then also, my husband as well, he's always kind of supported me on this. And
Good.
he's kind of said, once you start your business and everything's all right, I'm ready to retire. So he's pretty much, he's
Yeah, I
set.
love it. Yeah, and it's so great having that influence, God being able to speak into your life and you being willing to answer the call, accept the assignment that he's giving you and now be in a position to not only benefit from it personally, but also to help other people. And, it just is one of those things it's beyond ourselves, right? Especially if it's something that God has called us to do. We find that it's not just about me, it's often other people that are involved in this mission that he's called us to. So I think that is absolutely amazing. And when you look at yourself as a content creator, I think one of the main things is being consistent. How are you able to consistently put out valuable content that is serving your community?
Oh, yeah, it's
The sigh
very
is real.
yeah, because it's difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. It's very difficult, and particularly for me, it was quite hard because I was obviously working my 9 to 5 job at the same time, and then I also had YouTube as well. And for me, it was really being about really focusing on being organized, but
Mhm.
also at the same time, it's understanding my priorities. And so there were some times where I couldn't be going out every weekend, for
Mhm.
example. Or to be honest, actually, because by the time I started my YouTube channel, we were in lockdown, particularly
Right.
where I'm from in the UK, we were in lockdown for months. And so that was a really good excuse because it meant that I could just, film my videos and then I can
Right.
edit my videos and it was all good. It was only when we started to open up where I went, oh
Mhm.
gosh, this is going to be quite awkward because now I have
Right.
to actually, leave the house. And
Yes.
so I really had to think about, what do I prioritize more? And for me, it was the fact that I could, you know, film these videos and edit these videos. And so I kind of prioritized that. And it
Mhm.
meant that I didn't maybe go out as much as,
Right.
most people will do. But
Mhm.
it's because I felt as if this is something that I really want to do. And I really enjoy it as well. It was
Yeah.
almost like a hobby for me at first. And now
Mhm.
obviously I now think of it as a business. But
Yeah.
really being organized and understanding, what's
Mhm.
going to be happening during the week and during the day. I did have to
Mhm.
wake up early in the morning quite a lot of the time just because I work better in the morning anyway. And so I
Mhm.
wanted to put all of my energy into my side hustle at the time. And then obviously I would then go into my 9 to 5 job. And then it meant that I didn't have to do too much work in the evenings.
Right. I like that because it kind of goes in reverse because I know a lot of people often, they'll focus on the 9 to 5 first and then work on the business at the end of the day. So I really like the fact that you even started to prioritize what is now your main business first. And I never heard of anybody doing that before, but I think that has some symbolism to it, because you're like, yo, I'm gonna wake up early, get my stuff done, and then I'll go in and help everybody at the employer's place and bring value there. I think that's really admirable, because it shows how valuable what you were doing, you were willing to sacrifice. And
Yeah.
sacrifice is definitely a par for the course.
Yeah, definitely. And at the end of the day, I mean, your employer's going to pay you
Right.
anyway, as long as I knew that I was doing the work,
Hmm.
but I had a shift where I said, actually, I feel like my business is something that I want to maybe do in the long term
Okay.
compared to my current 9 to 5. And
Hmm.
so I almost had to think about, okay, what should I be prioritizing? But at the same time, not dropping my performance. So I was still
Right.
performing well at work, but I
Hmm.
wasn't giving as much energy maybe as I
Hmm.
would have done, because I was now starting to put that into my business. But I'd be curious to know actually how you keep consistent as well with
Yeah.
everything.
Oh man, it is definitely a balancing act. I would say if I look back maybe 2 or 3 years ago, my workload wasn't as heavy, right? So I primarily do voice work and I do audio and video editing. So I had a handful of clients that I worked that kept me busy enough and earning a decent amount of money where I could pour a lot of my time into creating content for, at that time, just the audio podcast that I was doing. But this year, with rolling out this podcast and also starting to do live streams, and in addition to that, still managing now multiple podcasts, multiple channels, it's been a lot. And the workload has increased. I've been blessed to not only just see an increase in editing, but also see new video editing projects coming up, because now, as you know, videos, YouTubing, that stuff is so popular that it's starting to take off the way audio podcasts were maybe like a couple years ago, and especially during the pandemic. So for me, I really have to be very mindful of the priorities that I set. And if I'm being completely honest, I had to go and read the book called The One Thing, by Gary Keller. It helped me to reestablish how important priorities are. And more importantly, seeing that each day I have to pick one thing that's going to get me closer to the main goal that I'm trying to achieve. So, for example, with this podcast, Why We Succeed, once God gave me the green light to start this podcast, I literally went from zero to launch, and everything was done within 30 days. That's the first time I've ever launched anything that quickly. But I utilized the principle in that book, which is setting the priority. I knew what the end goal was, but every day I had to take one thing that's going to get me closer to that every single day, until at that 30th day we're launched, it's live, and the show is live. So for me, it's always a constant balance. I'll give you an example. Last week, I would say by Tuesday of last week, I had so much client work coming in, and I still had a lot of stuff to do on the content creation front, that I actually just had to like put a pause to the client work, because it didn't seem like it was going to slow down. Like I just had, every time I went to my inbox, it looked like a new message for somebody, reaching out and wanting me to do something. But I'm like, I had like 5 or 10 different client, no, what was it? Like 7 different client projects that I had to get done by the end of the week. On top of that, doing the content creation stuff. So I was like, nah, I can't take anything else on. So I think that's one of the valuable lessons that I learned, is knowing when to just press pause, say no, I can't take anything else on my plate. Everything that's on there is already full, and I got to start breaking up how I'm going to start knocking it out. So that's the way that I do it, is I prioritize personally and say there's one day a week that I'm going to focus on content creation and editing shows, getting episodes uploaded, whatever that may be. And for me, that's usually Monday. So I kind of follow your principle. At the top of the week, I set aside that time for the content creation. And then throughout the week, I'll pick one of those things that gets me closer each day, as I'm also managing the client projects.
Hello, my name is Veronia. I am a money coach and also a YouTuber as well. So you can find me on YouTube, Veronia Spaine, and the Spain is with an E on the end. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Veronia Spaine as well.